Today I'm with Debbie Lum, director of Seeking Asian Female. And so, Debbie, perhaps you can first tell me a little bit about what got you interested in this movie.
Well, the film is about the 60-year-old white guy who's got yellow fever. And as an Asian American woman, I've been, it's one of those issues that just has troubled me most of my life. And so...
So maybe you could define what yellow fever is.
We're in San Francisco. Everyone knows what yellow fever is. But it's basically when, usually it's defined as Western men who have an obsession for Asian women. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's around the culture. Other times it's, Asian men, from the gay community, mm-hmm. who like Western men who like Asian men. But it's generally about desire and, yeah.
So this was a topic that had bothered you for some time.
Growing up, I think I've encountered so many men, like the main character of my film, who have yellow fever, mm-hmm. And it just always bothered me, and they would never go away. And probably when I first started making the film many years ago, I thought, maybe I could do something about it, making this film.
Okay, all right. And so, what was your process in starting to find Stephen finally and make the film?
So I met, when I actually started making the film, I was writing a screenplay, and so I was actually doing some research on, one of the characters had yellow fever, and I was doing some research. I went online, and I started contacting people on Craigslist and other websites where men go to meet Asian women, and that's how I found Stephen. He was one of a big batch of men that I contacted.
So what drew you to Stephen?
Well, as I said in the film, Stephen really was that perfect documentary subject. I mean, he was so, first of all, he is completely stereotypically an Asiaphile, completely full-blown obsession. He, was interested in women of all ethnicities, started off using mail-order catalogs, decided it had to be China, and it was not just Chinese women, but, the whole culture and everything. He just, though he actually never learned to speak Chinese at all, but he was totally obsessed with women from China, and was also completely determined that this woman that he wanted to marry would be Chinese no matter what. But as I talked to him, I met a lot of men like that who had that particular obsession. So what distinguished Stephen was really this way of expressing himself that was totally unfiltered. He would just be very honest with me, mm-hmm. and tell me everything that he was thinking, so that it really allowed me. You're a psychologist, right?
Psychiatrist.
Psychiatrist. Yeah. You're a psychiatrist. So to get inside the mind of this person that I wanted to understand was actually kind of an amazing experience.
Yeah, amazing, and I would guess somewhat uncomfortable at times.
Yeah.
So you talk about that. I mean, Stephen actually goes through a process of looking through all these catalogs, and then the online listings of people in China and other countries, I guess, who want to meet white men. And then he finally actually he meets actually two women in the course of the movie, but one of them he finally actually brings to the United States on a, quote, fiancé visa, and marries her. So you actually got involved in their relationship too. So maybe you can kind of walk us a little bit through that.
Yeah, so I followed Stephen over the course of about 5 years, and for really the most of the time, I really thought that he was just somebody who really enjoyed searching. And I just, didn't think that, I couldn't see it happening, really. I'd watched him meet women and fail and propose, and nobody wanted to marry him. Mm. And I kind of felt like that's sort of his story, is that he's really interested in the fantasy of Asian women. And then, lo and behold, one day, a few years after I met him, he called and said, "Hey, I think I'm going to get married." And he found this young woman who was half his age from Anhui province in China, who agreed to marry him, mm-hmm. over the internet. And when she came here, I realized that, I was a little bit cautious. I was thinking, oh my gosh, this is just going to get this could get ugly. And but when she stepped off the plane, she completely threw all my expectations out the window. And there were a lot of complications. She didn't really speak English, and he spoke no Chinese. And their relationship was far different than what I expected. I was thinking it was this kind of unspoken arrangement that maybe he gets something and she gets something. What do they really want? Do they want? But what I came to find out almost immediately was that they had chemistry, and that they actually were trying sincerely to make a relationship, or at least that's what it seemed like. And I spent the rest of the time trying to understand what was going on. And while I was doing that and filming them, I just kept getting sucked into their story because they couldn't really communicate with each other without me.
Yeah, and I thought that's what you kind of captured both in their relationship and also your relationship to them. Is this initial period of being an outsider and being skeptical of the process, to actually being involved with it, uncomfortably involved with it at times, and then to finally kind of an acceptance and maybe a different way of looking at this type of relationship. So I guess you were looking for answers to this question of the exoticization of Asian women and trying to find some resolution. What kind of resolution do you think you found in making this film, or one answer? I mean, there are many answers to this, but what answers can you pick out?
I don't know if that's a film. I don't think I answered the original question that I set out to. I hope that's not disappointing for somebody who wants to go see it. But it ended up with a completely different. I ended up in a very different place, which was that. I sort of wanted to know what was right and what was wrong, and in the end, it ended up with a much more human story that looks at how two people are relating with each other, instead of how a whole issue is for a whole group of people. I was going to say something, but I'm blanking on what it was. The expectations that you have going in are, I think for me as a filmmaker, they ended up being much more rewarding because all of the ways in which I thought about the issue really had to be thought about differently after having filmed their story.
So my question was to talk about how you pretty much answered it. How your views of this question changed, and you said it became a very individualized story about two people and who are able to find a relationship. I think relationships are hard to make work, no matter who the participants. But yeah, so I guess that was kind of good to see. But there's a very unusual relationship, I think.
Well, so I think because for Asian Americans, yellow fever is this really sore point. And especially for Asian American women, we just don't like it when there are these men out there who are constantly objectifying us in a way, then looking at us through this lens of you're, the stereotype of an Asian woman. And so I think my expectation was that, this is just so wrong and it shouldn't exist. I mean, but the truth is that people do things for all kinds of reasons, and to look at a whole group of people through a certain lens is almost as bad as being on the other side of that. It's just as bad, really. And so I think that was probably the hard lesson for me to learn, is that, oh wait, I'm doing the same thing that I'm assuming other people are doing to me.
You're stereotyping and objectifying.
Yeah.
But you got to understand what that relationship was. I guess for me, what's always uncomfortable about that dynamic is that also that exoticization and projection onto Asian people and onto Asian women. But then on the flip side of it, there's also this, and you take a woman from China who comes to the United States. Obviously, she wants certain things about coming to the United States, from coming to the United States, and sees those. I mean, so she's making projections as well, which have to, be met with reality. But I guess what's uncomfortable is when the projection involves a devaluation of Asian identity on either side, from the white male side objectifying, or the Asian side being devalued, or
No, I think that's a good point. I think the stereotypes that everybody has stereotypes about everybody else. Doesn't matter what box you fit into, or what box you label somebody. But what's really, and in some ways I think we sort of rely on stereotypes, but what's really damaging about stereotypes are the judgments that go along with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what you're talking about when you say demeaning. I think it's that the assumption, that's usually a negative assumption, that you put with, or in the case of Western men looking at Asian women, maybe it's an assumption that they are going to be more, whatever words you want to use, docile or
submissive or compliant, or all these things. Right.
But most of the men that I interviewed who do have yellow fever, a lot of them were very well aware that actually, Asian women can be completely dominating.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that's another, that's out there too, I think. Basically, you could take one stereotype and replace it with another.
Yeah.
And the truth is that you have to look beyond the stereotypes and just sort of try to keep yourself from making any labels at all, which is a very hard thing to do in our culture, where we need quick answers to everything all the time.
I guess my concern as a psychiatrist is, of course, for the mental health of all parties involved. And so for the Asian women to, I think who suffer from more depression, particularly at younger and older ages, suffer from more suicide at those ages as well. So one of the reasons, I think, is just feeling devalued and diminished, and somehow kind of buying into the idea that, buying into the majority culture is going to take away an inherent devaluation. I think could that could leave some residue, I think. But
I think that's true. I think there are really some serious consequences that come out of any time when people are seen, in a way that's not, it's looking at Asian women in a way that we don't look at ourselves,
mm-hmm.
and seeing us in a way that doesn't fit the reality, and that can be very disappointing, But I think when you get, in this particular issue, yellow fever, when you get a little bit, I think, older, you realize
mm-hmm.
that people are always, people make a lot of mistakes when they try to get to know somebody. And it's very hard to know somebody before you know them, right? You're going to jump to some assumptions. And I think the big thing is that the more that you speak out and the more that you express who you are, then maybe that who you are is totally different from who they think you are. The more that you say that,
mm-hmm.
that's what's really important.
Mm-hmm.
And
so creating your own representation of yourself rather than accepting the projections of other people.
Exactly.
So, okay. Well, so your movie screens at CamFest, and then what are the release plans? You're on POV?
So in May, it's going to be on Independent Lens.
Independent Lens, okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And between CamFest and Independent Lens, we're doing this really exciting thing. On April 1st, we're launching a new short video series and web project called They're All So Beautiful. And it basically takes all a lot of the footage that was in the research and development of this film, and it turns it into this 5-part short video series that talks all about the issues of yellow fever.
Okay.
So if you're craving that kind of conversation after seeing the film, it's this great place to go to talk about it. We're inviting really interesting bloggers, and it's going to be released actually on our website, and we're working with Hyphen Magazine and some other partners.
Okay.
Cam is one of our partners as well. So.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks.